So a few weeks ago, I packed up my bags, left work, drove home, parked my car outside of our home, walked up the sidewalk to our front door, opened the door, and as my foot crossed over the threshold, my kids, Sydney and Hunter, 4 and 2, Sydney, they came running. Sydney, Daddy! She loves hugs. I love giving her hugs. And Hunter, Daddo! Doing his two-year-old, like, whatever it is. And then, but Hunter always fakes you out. He makes you think he wants a hug, and then he's just like, just kidding, and takes off the other direction, runs away. So I come home, and I am celebrated, which doesn't always happen, but man, it is sweet when it does. And so I pick Sydney up, and I give her a big hug. And about 15 minutes later, when I'm finally done squeezing her, because I love these moments so much, I go to set her down, and her little toes, right before they touch the ground, she says, Daddy, you want to play? Well, yeah. What are we going to play? Tickle me! Love it. It's one of two things, tickle me or hide and seek. So tickle me, so I grab her, throw her on the couch. I start tickling her armpits. She goes nuts over the horse bite on the leg there, you know. So I give her that, and she's just loving it. She's laughing hysterically. She's just wiggling all over the place. And then I go for the neck. She has a ticklish neck. I don't know if you do, but it's horrible. I do. And when people go to tickle, it's just like you become a turtle. It's like, and you kind of are trapped. It's like, And so I'm doing that, and she's laughing hysterically, and I'm realizing she's not breathing. So I figure I should probably take a little break and let her, not go unconscious and start breathing again. And for whatever reason, in this moment, I don't think we've ever built a fort before. So I'm letting her take a break, and I say, hey, Sydney, do you want to build a fort? Yeah! What's a fort? It was awesome. So I was like, I'll show you. So we get the necessary supplies. I'm hoping that most of you in this room have had the honor and privilege of building a fort. And you get some chairs, you put them back in, at least that's what we do, and then you get a big blanket and you drape it across so it's the roof, and you get some pillows and you stack it on there so the roof doesn't collapse on you, because suffocation while you're playing is bad. And so you get this thing set up, and as I look back, I'm like, okay, this is good, we're steady, we're stable, it's ready to be played in. We drag the pillows in, because we're not about to sit on the hardwood floor. Come on, that's not appropriate for our booties. So we pull in these pillows, and we sit, and we talk, and we laugh, and we have this awesome moment. It gets quiet, and I leave the quiet, and Sydney breaks the silence by saying, oh no. And I'm like, what? You can tell her right brain is fully engaged in something right now. It's a scary movie, Dad. We're watching a scary movie. But it's okay, you don't need to be afraid. I was like, what? You're 4. I'm 31. What? Okay. I was like, okay, thanks for telling me. So we're watching this scary movie, which we don't do at our house, just so you know, we don't watch scary movies. Anyway, and so we're laughing, and I'm acting like I'm getting more and more scared and tense as this imaginary movie goes on, and Sydney kind of looks and sees this, and she's like, Dad, it's pretend. And I'm like, well, I'm having a fun time pretending. So I keep pretending, and then what do dads do? They like to scare their children. So when the time is right, I scream really loud. And both of them had no idea this was coming, and their heads just whip at me, right? And it's kind of like, ooh, did you break something on that? Because that was aggressive. And Sydney is old enough to know me well enough that she reads my face, and she knows that I'm kidding. So she starts laughing. Hunter's 2, he doesn't know this yet. So he's like, and starts crying, and then he runs out of the fire escape, which there wasn't one, but our fort, and takes off and goes to find Mom, because Mom is comfort and peace. So Natalie, my wife, picks him up and is comforting him. And dads, you may have had this moment where your wife is talking to you, but not like at you, you know what I'm saying? It's like, oh, Daddy was just playing, he wasn't really scared, and he won't ever do that again, right? Dad, you know these moments. It's a beautiful thing. And so I was like, nope, sorry, buddy. Dad won't ever do that again. So Hunter comes over, and he joins us, and we keep playing. We have to take a break for dinner. And then afterwards, we get out flashlights and play in our fort more. And it's this beautiful moment. And as I'm going to bed that night, I am proud of myself. And I'm thinking back and thinking, what an awesome night that was. Now, you may be going, why were you proud of yourself? Building a fort doesn't require a whole lot of skills. No, it doesn't. But that is not my natural tendency. When I come home from work, what I just described is not my natural tendency. I come home from work, and maybe some of you have been there before. Your foot crosses the threshold, and your kids come to you, and you're like, I'm so tired. Like, I've worked hard all day. Daddy needs a break. And you think, oh, there's this fantastic armchair that I refer to as a throne. And I need to sit in my throne, and Daddy needs to relax. But if you want to rub Daddy's feet, I'm game. You go for it, right? And you sit here because I've been working hard all day. I deserve a little bit of a break. I feel like my family should cater to me. I want dinner to be ready when I get home. I want my family to adjust their schedule around what I want to do, or at least let me do what I want to do. In short, I come home thinking that I'm coming home to my kingdom, and I am the king, and I rightfully sit in the throne, and I come home to be served, not to serve. And I've come to call these experiences, when I have these moments, which I do, so if you do too, you're not alone. The two of us are in it together. I call these throne confusion. These are moments when I'm experiencing throne confusion. What that's about is that I acknowledge that there is a divine throne in my life every day. And it just so happens that in this moment, when my foot crosses the threshold and I enter the home, and I want to be served, I want to be waited on, I want to be appreciated, I want to be adored. In those moments, I'm under the distinct impression that that throne is meant for me. Now, I have to warn you, when we're suffering from throne confusion, when I suffer from throne confusion, you suffocate any build the fort moments. You can't see them. You don't want to engage in them because you're only interested in yourself. I'm only interested in myself. And so what I've come to learn, that night I went to bed and I was grateful. I was proud of myself. Man, we had a great night. When I think that the throne is for me, I go home not proud of myself. I go to bed full of resentment and regret and remorse because I just wasted a great opportunity to engage and connect with my family and to honor them above myself. So the question is okay, well then what did you do different? What happened on the night that you went home and were able to be like, yeah, of course I want to play, genuinely. Of course I want to play. What do you want to play? Tickle me. Great. Oh, what did I do different? I want to read a verse for you out of Hebrews. It comes in chapter 4, verse 15 and 16. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are, yet was without sin. Let us then approach the throne of grace with confidence, so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need. In our time of need. That day, on my way home, I was driving home. I live in Linden, so it's 25 minutes. And that is a great time for me to think and to center myself on the one who deserves to sit in the throne, the one who created life and my life. It's a time to center myself and say, Jesus Christ is the one who sits on that throne, not me. And then to go to the throne of grace, the throne of God, and to ask him through his grace and mercy to prepare me for the minute my foot crosses that threshold when I get home. And he does. This is the cool thing about our God, right? He is full of grace. He's full of mercy. He knows what we're going through. He's experienced it himself. And he is the one who is able to give us everything that we need so that when we get home, we're ready to say, yeah, I want to play with you. Absolutely, I want to play with you. You see, I want to be a dad who capitalizes on build a fort moments, who creates build a fort moments. And what I've learned in these recent months is that to do that, I have to be totally dependent on the one who sits in the throne and to ask him to prepare me for the minute I get home so that I might be home ready to serve my family, not myself. If you are in this situation, if you connect with any part of my story, you are not alone. But don't allow yourself to stay seated in a throne that is not meant for you. It is meant for God, and I will tell you this. When we allow Jesus to sit in the throne and we look for these opportunities to serve our family, they're more life-giving than any time I have ever honored myself over my family. Thanks so much for letting me share a little bit with you about what I'm learning. Happy Father's Day.
Well, good morning. Yep. I'm going to take you back about 8 months. 8 months ago, we were 7 months pregnant. And when I say we, I mean my wife. We're 7 months pregnant. It's a Friday night. We're at Boundary Bay. I like Boundary Bay on Friday nights. It's live. Things are going on. There's a lot of happening stuff. It really brings to life what Bellingham is all about. Some of the B things that I think of. There's a lot of people with beards. I don't know if you noticed this. It's a pretty typical thing in Bellingham. There's a lot of Birkenstocks. There's a lot of bicycle helmets. Okay, here's the thing. Have you guys noticed this in Bellingham? You walk into a restaurant and people have bicycle helmets on through the entire meal. Have you guys seen this? What's going on there? Like, are those not removable? Those like surgically attached? What's just something I've noticed, anyways. So we're there. There's a lot of people with their bicycle helmets on eating dinner as well. And we're hanging out with Randy and Pam Priest, some of our favorite people in the world. And we're talking with them, and it's 7 months into the pregnancy. I mean, we're just a couple months away from meeting our little girl, and that's all conversation's going to be about, is about this little girl. We don't really talk about anything else but about what we're going to experience as parents, and we're just excited. Can't wait to meet her. Can't wait for my wife to quit being, in pain all the time and get this thing out into the real world and meet her. And so we're super excited, super stoked about just meeting her. That's the whole conversation. The whole conversation's based around that. And it is loud, and it is live, and you got the the piano player over in the bar area, and you can hear just people, and Boundary Bay has this really fantastic ambiance called like concrete walls, and so everything just bounces off these concrete walls, and it's just loud. And Pam innocently asked my wife this question. She looks at my wife and she says, "So is your dad excited about becoming a grandfather? Is your dad excited about becoming a grandfather?" And in that moment, it was like I was hit by a ton of bricks with the Mack truck. Or like, I don't know what that phrase is. Like I was hit by a Mack truck with a ton of bricks in the back. Or something. Like, something hit me really hard. And it hurt real bad. And it was like I was in the cone of silence. Like suddenly everything around me just faded away. I didn't recognize anything going on around me. It was like suddenly everything just went silent, and I didn't hear another thing that was going on. Now, everything continued. The conversation continued, and people continued to spill drinks and to be loud, and the piano continued to play, but I didn't hear any of it. And it was like for just a couple seconds, I just completely disengaged. I went back into my head, and I just started to replay things. And see, here's the thing. I went back to when I was 9 years old in my head. And for me, fatherhood, kind of the journey of fatherhood for me, took a really sharp turn at 9 years old. It's a very beautiful picture, but it has a really ugly frame around it. I went back to when I was 9. My dad died when I was 9 years old. When I was 9 years old, my dad passed away, and he was a great guy, a pastor. A lot of people loved him, but it was through choices that he made that he died, that he left us. When I was 9 years old, I experienced the loss of my dad. And some of you in this room know exactly what I'm talking about when I say that you grew up without a father. Whether it was through divorce, whether it was abandonment, whether it was just having a lousy dad, or whether it was death, you know what I'm talking about when I say that you grew up without a father figure. And it's not a pretty picture. When your foundation of your household, when your protector, your provider is suddenly ripped away from you, you know exactly what I'm talking about, how that makes you feel, the anxiety, the anger, the pain that you grow up with. There's a great book, if you're in this situation, called To Own a Dragon. It's by Donald Miller. And in the first couple chapters, Donald Miller talks about an elephant. And he talks about this documentary about an elephant. So since, first of all, I'm wicked cool, and secondly, I have a lot of free time, I rented this documentary. I'm just a party waiting to happen. And so I rent this National Geographic documentary. Thank you. It's hard being this hip. So I watch it, and I'm watching this DVD, and yes, it does come on DVD. Some of you are like, it only comes out on VHS. No, they went to DVD recently. And so I'm watching this film, and what it's about is about a young elephant. And this young elephant is growing up, and its father elephant dies. The dad elephant dies and leaves this young elephant all by itself. And what happens every time with young adolescent elephants who are left by themselves when their father figure dies, every single time this happens to a young elephant, this is the first thing that happens. First of all, a yellow pus starts to drip down its leg. Now, I know isn't that a nice visual right there? Like that? A yellow pus starts to run down its leg. I don't know where it comes from. I didn't Wikipedia this. I don't want to know that much about it. But a yellow pus runs down this young elephant's leg. And this young elephant becomes very, very angry. And it just naturally becomes very angry. And this young elephant starts to realize, I am big, I am powerful, I'm a male, and it doesn't know what to do with all this power that's been given. So it starts to run over trees, like it starts to run down trees and actually knock down trees. It starts to pick fights with like hippopotami. I don't know what those are, for sure. It picks fights with like rhinos and like all these kind of things. I'm not even getting rhinoceroses. It picks fights with all these things that you hear in that Christmas song. I want a hippopotamus. Anyways, I just realized that for the first time. Anyways, it starts to pick fights with all these other animals. It becomes angry. It doesn't know what to do with this. It's going, yes, I'm big, I'm powerful, I'm a male, but what do I do with this power that I've been given? What do I do with this? And it doesn't know. And as I was watching this DVD, I started to sympathize with this elephant. And I'm like getting all emotional. I'm like, oh, that poor thing. Oh my goodness. I'm just like that elephant. And you're watching this elephant, you feel so bad for it. It's like when you watch March of the Penguins, and you're like, you're just tearing up with these penguins. And you don't know why. You're like, oh, those poor penguins. Oh my, they come back at the right time. And I'm watching this thing, and I'm like getting emotional. I'm sympathizing with this young elephant because I knew exactly what that felt like. I knew exactly what it felt like to be young, but to be powerful and to be a male. And to be going, what do I do with this? How do I act like a man? And I don't know how. What's interesting is, in this video, an older elephant comes along and he takes in this younger elephant. And he mentors this younger elephant. And when he does that, instantly that yellow pus goes away. And that young elephant starts to learn what it means to be a man, what it means to be an adult, what it means to be powerful. It starts to learn what it means to be those things. Now, for me, growing up, if you relate to anything that I'm saying here, you know exactly what I'm talking about when I say that it's awkward, that it's painful growing up without a dad. That there is a part of us that's running around trying to figure out, what are we supposed to do with this power that we've been given? What does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be an adult? We're running around trying to figure out what that is. When I was growing up, it was very painful. It was almost like there was two clubs. There was like the club of guys that didn't have dads, and we were missing something. We just didn't have something together. I can't explain it. It just was something was missing. It was very awkward for us. And then there was like the group of guys that had dads, and they had like these secret keys to the world that we just didn't have. We just didn't know certain things. I just didn't have that in me. And there was one example, for instance. It was the first time I was ever shaving. And I was probably in like 6th grade. I'm a beast. And so I'm not going to talk like that anymore. So I'm shaving, and I'm shaving. There's 2 sinks in the bathroom. There's a sink here, sink over here, and I'm shaving for the first time. And I've got my shaving cream, and I've got those disposable razors that are just ripe for bursting an artery or something. So I got those bad boys ready to roll. And I've got everything ready to go, and I'm starting to shave. And my mom, bless her heart, comes into the bathroom, sees what's going on, and she comes over to the other sink. And she takes the shaving cream, she puts it on her face. She takes the razor. And I'm like, Mom, what are you doing there? And she's like, I'm going to show you how to shave. Like, Mom, I would literally rather cut myself 1 million times than see you shave your face. I'm already in the middle of middle school. There is enough awkwardness in my life as it is. I do not need people knowing that my mom came into the bathroom and shaved with me. And I don't say that to fault my mom. She was amazing. She did the best she could. From the time my dad died until last year, she remained single just to raise me. She didn't even date, nothing. She did the best she could. I'm not saying that to fault my mom. She was amazing. Did a phenomenal job. But there's just something, when you see moments like that, it was one of those moments where I go, oh, I don't have a dad. I've got a mom who's very willing, but I do not have a dad. You know? There's just those awkward moments like that you grow up and you realize, like, there's something missing. Now, snap back into this moment at Boundary Bay, and I'm back there, and I start to realize these things all come into my mind, and probably within 15 seconds, I go through all the stages of grief. And I'm feeling the anger, and I'm feeling the guilt, and I'm feeling the depression, and then suddenly I come back to the acceptance. But it's very difficult when you're in those moments. And so here's the things I did. I went home, I started to journal about this, started to write stuff down. Started to think about what is going on inside of me emotionally. I realized as I was journaling about this, that this had just brought this up in me again. And I started to journal, and I thought, there's really two paths I can go here. And some of you guys may be in this exact same spot. There's two paths I can go down. One path is the side that says, you know what, I'm just going to pack it up. And I'm just going to say, forget it. This fatherhood thing is not for me. And I'll disengage from this child and try to keep my distance. And maybe, when I look at it, I'm an emotional wreck. Why am I even in a committed relationship with my wife? I'm a train wreck. I'm going, why am I even there? And I could pack it all up and say, this isn't for me. I'm not going to do this. Or I could go the other direction. These are the words that I ended up writing down. I wrote these words. I said, I want to be a father who never, ever lets his daughter feel the pain that I felt. Who never lets his daughter feel the awkwardness, the uncertainty of not having a father. And I'm going to stand in the gap, and I'm going to do that. I'm going to be the kind of dad who rights the wrongs that weren't in my own life. So I also drew a picture next to that, and this is where the tree comes in. I drew a picture of a tree, and I drew this picture of a tree chopped down, because I felt like, you know what? My lineage, my heritage has been chopped down. My family tree has been chopped down. I realized not only will my dad not be there for my daughter as a grandfather figure, which would be amazing, and he would be great at that. And he robbed her of the opportunity to have him as a grandfather. But he also robbed me of the opportunity to have him as a dad and a mentor as I go into fatherhood. And I realized I don't have anybody above me. I don't have anybody to go to when I have the questions. I don't have that dad figure to go to now that I'm a dad. And I felt like, you know what, there's this lineage that's been cut off. There's this heritage that's not there right now. I didn't know what to do with that. In Psalm 68, there's a very simple verse, and you've probably heard it a million times, but it just says, David just wrote in Psalm 68, verse 5, it just says that God is the father to the fatherless. And I know that sounds cliche, and that he's a father to me when I didn't have a dad here on earth, and there's really nothing that replaces the dad on earth. I don't want you to think that I'm saying that in a cliche way, but here's where it really comforted me, is when I looked at this family tree, I realized it had to be replanted. I had to start over. I had to replant the family tree. And for me, there was a huge task in that. But here's what I realized, is my lineage is not cut off. My family is not based on me as a father. My family is not based on my dad as a father. My family is based on God as our father. I'm going to take it all the way back to the origin of our family. I'm going to go back to the creator and the sustainer of our entire lives. This whole family is not based around me and my shortcomings. It's not based around my dad and his shortcomings. It is based around the God of the universe. And when I realized that, I cannot tell you the relief in my life that happened. Oh, I felt so good. So dads, today you might have a couple paths that you're on. Even if you're just struggling with the father thing, with not having a father. There's two paths you can be on. There's the path where you can say, you know what, I'm just messed up, I'm scarred, and it's over. Or there's a path where you can say, I am going to dig in, I'm going to stand in the gap, I'm going to make sure that this world doesn't feel the pain, that my child doesn't feel the pain that I had to feel. And I'm not going to be the roots of this family tree. I'm going to let God be the roots that hold this family tree up. Thank you for letting me share. Happy Father's Day.
So it's a warm day. My kids are outside in the backyard playing together, and there's a sliding glass door that separates the backyard from the main living space of our house. My wife and I are on the inside just doing some chores in that main living space, hearing the joyful voices come through the open door. Eventually, there's a child that shows up at the back door, one of our kids, and asks a very simple question. Can I have a drink of water, please? I mean, polite and everything. Not a very high demand by the looks of it initially. But you need to kind of think about this for a moment when it's applied to my family and the domino effect that could ensue as a result of me handing this cup of water to this one child, right? Because if I went and did that, then this child will go out in the backyard and have a seat and, have this refreshing cup of water, and another child will notice that they have an undying thirst, and it's like they're in the Sahara or something, and they need to go to the back door and ask for a cup of water. A couple minutes later, I'll need to give that child a cup of water, and then another one, and then another one, and it'll go on 5 times. And I'll lose about 15 minutes of my life getting cups of water for my children. Now, in situations like that, I am faced with a question that kind of it recurs over and over again. And that question is, why do I have 5 children? What is that about? Now that question has started to bring me some anxiety, as it poses itself again and again, over and over. And so to answer that question, I need to look back and say, well, how did I end up with 5 children? Because when my wife and I, early in our marriage, we had this very clear picture from God on what our family would look like. 2 boys, 2 years apart. And that's what God wanted for us. So when we moved here in 2006, that's exactly what we were. This cute little family of 4, 2 boys, 2 years apart. And, people were happy to have us into their homes. And restaurants did not groan when we showed up. And people didn't think that my wife was Canadian when they look into her grocery store, bag and see all this milk. They didn't think that. In the summer of 2007, Cornwell kind of wrecked our lives by doing this message series on the prophets in the Old Testament. And there was this theme that went through all of the message, and it was this theme of injustice. And my wife and I were gripped by this theme of injustice. And we felt like God was prompting us to engage in the raw injustice that exists in our world today. And we didn't really know what that looked like. And so we sat down and we inventoried what we have, because we don't have millions of dollars that we could donate and plant wells all over the world. So we looked at what we do have. We do have vibrant relationships with God. We have a great marriage, a wonderful family, a beautiful home with the roof over our heads and access to food and clean water and healthcare and education. Also on that list was this passion for international adoption. 2 boys, 2 years apart. One of those boys happened to be adopted from a foreign country. And so we had a great experience with that. And so we added that to our list. And as we thought about how does God want to apply who we are to put a dent in injustice, we said, why have we only adopted once? There's 140 million orphans in the world. God invited us to put a dent in that. And so we set about bringing home an infant girl. I thought that'd be a great idea, to bring home a little infant girl. I had no idea, the way that she would wrap her dad around her finger. And I mean, I'm just creating this little princess. I've already started her apology letter to her future husband, and the poor guy is just really feel for him. But I thought it'd be a great idea to bring home this infant girl. And then we thought, well, maybe it's not an infant girl. Maybe it's a boy our boy's age. And how neat it would be to have these 3 boys growing up together and they're best friends, and there's always somebody to play with. And so we thought, well, maybe that's what it looks like. The day that we became eligible to adopt, there's this big paper trail, and it ends with this rubber stamp that says you're good to go. So the day that we got that rubber stamp, the adoption agency that we were working with had an infant girl and her brother who was exactly our boy's age. And we said, that's our family. There are the children that God is calling us to. It wasn't 1, it was 2 more. So as we go about bringing these kids home, preparing for the trip to go get them and bring them home, my wife, one night we were getting ready for bed, and she says to me, David, I think there's an older child in our mix. And I'm thinking, well, I think there's 4 older children, down the road. She says, no, I think we need to bring home an older child. And I was just getting used to the idea of having 4 kids, no more 2 boys, 2 years apart, cute little family. That was shattered. I was just getting used to the 4, and she's suggesting a 5th, that it's harder to, less people are bringing home older children. Most folks go and bring home infants. And so these older children who have different issues, my wife was saying, well, we're as well equipped as anybody to deal with those. And so 1 year ago, this very weekend, we brought home our oldest daughter, Ayelich. She's 13 now. And that's how we got 5. I do not doubt for a second that God called us to 5 kids. I mean, I can tell you about the intimate prayer moments that we had that where we heard God's nudging and prompting toward those 5 children. And yet I still ask the question, why do I have 5 children? And I ask it in a way that honestly, some anxiety surfaces and some frustration surfaces around that. And if I'm really honest, I ask that question with a degree of anxiety because my life as a parent is not what I expected. The reality that is having 5 children isn't what I ever anticipated. I never anticipated having a big family. Wasn't part of my lifelong goal. And yet here I am with 5 kids. And it's not at all what I expected. It's a different ballgame with 5 kids. Just the sheer volume of what we face is different. I thought, my expectation of parenting was to spend a huge amount of time individually with each one of my children, where I would have long conversations on teachable moments, where I would build a relationship with them just by wasting time with them, where we would have lots of opportunities for little daddy and me type field trips, where it's just one-on-one. But that amount of time that I have to build into my kids individually has really shrunk. It's divided by 5 now instead of divided by 2. And just the sheer volume of laundry and making lunches and going potty and washing dishes and tying shoes, and it just takes a long time to do that stuff with 5 kids. And it encroaches upon the time that I expected to have one-on-one with my children. Then there's the whole volume of repeating yourself. I mean, parents, are you vaguely aware of, go clean your room? No, really, go clean your room. Go clean your room. I mean, multiply that by 5 times. There's more time that's lost. And as I watch the amount of time shrink away, and more in the loss of time that I have to spend individually with my kids, I ask that question with a large degree of frustration. Why do I have 5 children? A few weeks ago, I wrote in my journal, God, you've called me to this many kids. Why? So I can feed them, so I can clothe them? Right now, they're a list of chores, not kids to spend time with. Now, as I mentioned, I don't doubt for a second that God called me to be the father of 5 children. There's just this tension that exists between this expectation and the reality. And the way that I looked at it over these last few weeks is I've realized that God hasn't called me past tense to 5 children. He calls me every single day to be the parent of 5 children. It's a lifelong deal. And so a few weeks ago, I freshly laid aside my expectations of parenting. And I surrendered to God's call. Because it really came down to whose plan is better for my life. Is my plan better? Or do I really believe that God's plan for our lives is better than our own? And if I really believe it, I need to surrender to it. And so I am before you today freshly surrendered to the call on my life to be the parent of 5 for the rest of my life. And I've stopped asking the question, why do I have 5 children? I need to figure out next how to go about living out that call, living out that surrender. And in John chapter 6, it's the story of Jesus feeding the 5,000. I don't have 5,000 yet, but I have 5. Here's what it says. When Jesus looked up and saw a great crowd coming toward him, he said to Philip, "Where shall we buy bread for these people to eat?" He asked this only to test him, for he knew already He had in mind what he was going to do. Philip answered him, 8 months' wages would not buy enough bread for each one to have a single bite. Another of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. Here is a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. But how far will that go among so many? Jesus said, have the people sit down. There was plenty of grass in that place, and the men sat down, about 5,000 of them. Jesus took the loaves, gave thanks, and distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted. He did the same with the fish. When they had all enough to eat, he said to his disciples, gather the pieces that are left over, let nothing be wasted. So they gathered them and filled 12 baskets with the pieces of 5 barley loaves left over by those who had eaten. Now I want you to look at the perspectives that are in this passage. Philip's perspective is on the scope of the problem. It's just too big. 8 months' wages wouldn't give everybody a single bite. Andrew's perspective was on the scarcity of resources. We've only got 5 loaves and 2 fish. How in the world is that going to give everybody enough to eat? And then there's Jesus' perspective. And Jesus, he takes what they have available and he offers it to God and says, you make up the difference. See, I've been focused on the size of the problem, 5 children. I've been focused on the scarcity of resources, 1 father with 24 hours in a day. But what Jesus is asking is to offer what I have, which is the exact thing that started it all. So that thirsty child who comes to the back sliding door and says, can I have a drink of water? I need to think about what I have. A jug and a stack of cups. And so I offer what I have to God and surrender to his call in my life to be the father of 5 children. And pray like crazy that he makes up the difference. What's God's call in your life? And maybe you don't understand it, just like I don't understand it. Maybe it's not your expectation. But he's calling you to do it. And he's saying, offer me what you have. I'll take care of the rest. I'd like to invite the fathers who are here today to stand up because we want to pray for us as dads. The challenge that we have is a big one. And as we surrender every day to being dads, we need all the help we can get. So let's be praying for these fathers right now. Almighty Father, we turn to you. And we pray for us as dads. We pray, Lord, that we would have every measure of who you are to be able to offer that to our children, whether they be infants or grown adults. Our kids still need us. And Father, in those moments when we just want to collapse into our throne and be served, give us the strength to put our needs aside and to offer what we have, which is maybe the last shred of energy after a long day, to offer you and our kids what we have that we might build a beautiful family tree, a beautiful legacy. Give us strength and courage and patience and boldness and wisdom and love and forgiveness, all that we need, Lord, to do this big job of parenting. We love you, God, and we surrender ourselves as fathers to you. In Jesus' name. And everybody said, Happy Father's Day. Enjoy your day.